Hello and welcome to this training on the MICU Losap application, which is a mandatory requirement for all members of CCMICU to have and use to record your duty hours and your Losap points. We do this because it's for your benefit to make sure that you get the credit for what you're supposed to get. Plus, we know that the requirements from the point of view of your duty hours for the year or for the previous 12 months have been met, and that you're making your 50 LOSAP points in the year with the activities that qualify. So we start off at the login page. You'll put your username in and your password. I happen to go through the terms and agreement every time, but you don't have to. It may go straight in with you. This basically gets you to a point where you agree to the terms and conditions, and then you log in. And you get to the front page of your app. Now, I'm on a Windows-based platform at the moment, but you can do this on iOS, or you can do it on Android and do it on your cell phone. The whole point about this is it's convenient and easy to use. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the My Progress tab. First thing we see is the circle come up. It calculates where we are today in our capture of hours and points. There are two sections up at the top. On the left hand side, Losap year-to-date progress. This shows me of the 50 points that I need to get a Losap year, 50 qualified points, I actually have got a total of 111 so far. It still only counts 50, but it shows me that I've got 111 point activities to count towards that 50. So obviously I'm well over 100%, which is why my main indicator shows 100%. Below that, it shows my duty hours, and that's duty hours for the last 12 months. And this is where we start to see that duty hours and points are different. When it talks about 50 points, that's 50 points in the Losap year, from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. When we talk about duty hours is maintaining a rolling account of the previous 12 months. Today, it's July, so to the previous 31st of July, 1st of August, I have done 288 hours. Now, I've actually done more than that because we only started this in 1st of January this year, so it's actually 288 since the 1st of January. But what it's doing is it's calculating the previous 12 months. It rolls along. So these time periods are different between the two. And this is what I want to get across to start with, that duty hours and Losap points are totally different. We enter them separately, they are different, they mean different things, and they're tracked for different reasons. That may change in the future on revision 2, but for now, that's the way it works. Over on the right-hand side, we have a calendar. If I go and press the calendar button, it opens up like a normal drop-down calendar. The interesting thing about these calendars is that you can go in and you can put in a previous date. So say, for instance, I put in the 20th, you'll see my active date changes to the 20th, 2020, July. And the reason for that is that sometimes you forget to put in your activities on a specific date, or you forget to put in your hours for a specific date. This allows you to go back and correct that by going in and picking the date. An important point here is you have to pick the date before you enter the information. You can't enter the information and then say, oh, I'm going to put in a different date. No, the date has to be entered first, then you enter the information. And you'll see how I'm going to use that in a minute. So let's move down the page to the next panel. There are 7 categories in Losap. Only 7. There will never be more than 7 unless the law changes. There will never be less than 7 unless the law changes. These are the categories: calls, drills, meeting attendance, training, collateral duties, management, and military service. Duty hours itself is not a part of Losap, and therefore you'll see that there's nothing in this points total sitting over here, because duty hours themselves don't create points. Duty hours, as I said earlier, are tracked separately, and we'll show you how we do that in a minute. So I've set, remember, I set the 20th up here. Well, there's a reason. It's the 25th today, but on Monday I did a meeting, which was a Chiefs meeting. So I'm going to go and put that meeting in because I forgot to put it in. So I'm going to select the type of meeting. Well, is it a county meeting or a company meeting? It's a county meeting because it was a Chiefs meeting. And so I'm going to select county meeting. And I'm going to put a note in here that said Chiefs meeting. And I'm going to put the fact that it was a WebEx so that I remember it's virtual. Now, if I come down and I save that meeting, it's showing me that I'm going to get a credit of 1 point. That's 1 Losap point. Save that meeting. There it is. System goes to the cloud straight away. It doesn't remember this on your machine. It goes straight into the cloud. It goes and does a recalculation and brings the data back. Well, wait a minute. I had 25 points before for meetings, so why haven't I got 26 now? Simple answer. I'm capped at 25. That's according to Chapter 54 law. And these numbers that sit down the outside on the right-hand side show that I can get a maximum of 40 points credited for Losap, for calls, 25 for drills, 25 for meetings, 25 for training, 25 for collateral, 25 for management, and 50 for military service. You cannot exceed the number of points that are allocated in your account. But of course it doesn't mean to say that you can't do more calls or have more meetings. That is actually remembered in background, but you only get credit up to the cap that the law allows. So if you go out and you do 60 calls and you say, well, I've done 60 calls, so I've got 60 points, so therefore I'm good for Losap this year, that's not true. It's only true if you have reached your 40 and then in a different category you've picked up the other 10. No one single category can get you to that 50-point limit. Not possible. So you have to, that's why we show the cap limits, and it shows you how much more you can pick up in that particular category. Doesn't mean to say you don't go and do more drills. It doesn't mean to say you don't go and do more calls. Yes, by all means do that. Your administrator actually can see what you've done and how productive you've been within the company. And that's very useful. It's used for awards. It's used for all sorts of other things. But in terms of Losap, remember the cap. Okay. So let's go and do something else. Let's pick calls. I'm going to go and do a call. So one of the things about calls is that we set up call number 1 in this particular case. It's a 7-digit number. That is the incident number that's issued by the CAD. You have to personally enter that number. The CAD doesn't enter it for you. You enter the number. There's no linkage here between the CAD and your system. You go and put that call number in. So I'm going to pick a call number and I'm going to put that in. So I'm going to go 20, let's see, sorry, 20, 456273, okay, and that's 7 digits. If I put in more than 7 digits or less than 7 digits, or I put in any alphas, so for instance, if I try and put an alpha in there and I try and save a call, it won't allow me to do it. Has to be a 7-digit number. It also has to be unique. If you've entered that number before and you've counted that call, it will go and check and it will say, no, that's a duplicate. You can't enter a call twice because that would mean you were getting 2 points for the same call. You can't do that. Say, for instance, you were out there and you'd done 2 calls today and you want to enter those 2 calls at the same time rather than go through this again. Well, you can go in and press that green button and you can enter the second call, 2067564. There you go. Just picked a random number. It's now added another call. All that I have to do to put this into my account is go save calls. You notice that I had 32 calls before. So what should I have now when it recalculates? I've just put 2 calls in. I've now got 34 calls towards my total of 40. One more point. Remember I changed the date to 20 before when I was doing that entry for the Chiefs meeting? Well, when I did that entry and I closed that entry, it immediately reverted back to today's date. So it doesn't accidentally leave you at a previous date or a false entry. It always defaults to today. So you always have to remember, if you want it to not be today, if you want it to be a different day, then you have to go and you set the date first. Then it will automatically revert to today if as soon as you enter that data. One more rule, you can't enter data forward. You can't say, well, I'm going to do a shift in 3 days time. I'm going to go in, or I'm going to do a drill in 3 days time, or in a month's time I'm going to continue to be an officer in a particular position. You can't forward enter stuff which hasn't happened yet, because it may not happen. And that would mean that you were effectively banking points for your Losap before you actually had done the work, and you can't do that. So what else we got? We've done calls, we've got drills. I can go and do a drill. So say I did a drill today, I can just go and put in the number of drills I did. Say I did 2 drills today, I can go and put in that number, save drills, it'll give me 2 points. Not going to do that. If I want to cancel something out, I just go back and I cancel it out by clicking on the category. Training. Training is interesting. It's a little more complicated. So with training, the rule for Losap is 1 point per hour of training. However, we have different types of training. Any one of those counts at 1 point per hour. But sometimes it's useful to know what sort of training. CAPCF1, for anybody who doesn't know, CAPCF1 is in-person classroom training. CAPCF3 is something where you may go onto a website and you may go through a training program, but there's no instructor physically present, and you can do it on your computer at home or anywhere else. CAPCF5 is one of those what's called VILT, V-I-L-T, virtual instructor-led training, which is there's a real instructor, you can talk to that real instructor, but they're at the other end of an electronic link. State training. Well, a good example of state training is we just did that COVID-19 training specifically as a special rollout for our state training. Another example would be when you do your training for protocol update. You can go in and you can say that was state training and you can identify it as such. Local training is something where you may go down to the hospital and get a training program. We used to do that a lot. We'd go and do a special one-off training program. It isn't particularly MEMS approved, but it is something that you may do for training. Online, that's kind of simple, but for those companies that have got things like Target Solutions, which we do have, or you can go onto Boundary University or EMS1. All of those, Red Vector is another company that does that. That's your online training. Any of those things, if you spend 1 hour of training, you get 1 point. It's just telling you what type of training you get. You then say how many hours you did, put the total number of hours. If you've done 6 hours, 10 minutes, you put down 6 hours. If you've done 6 hours, 50 minutes, it would be reasonable to put down 7. You then save your training. If I was to put in here that I'd done 5 hours of training today, then I can save that training and I'm going to get 5 points credited to my training. I'm not going to do that because I didn't do any training today, so I'm going to cancel out of it. Collateral duties. This is something that's very misunderstood. So collateral duties, people use the expression of, well, if you go and wash an ambulance. Absolutely true. If you go and wash an ambulance, every hour you spend washing a piece of apparatus or cleaning up. There's a cleanup example. Doing facilities maintenance, buildings and grounds. All of that stuff, every hour you spend, when you put it in here, it will allocate you a specific number of points for every hour, 1 point per hour. But it's also anything else. So for instance, if you're the treasurer and you're doing your finance and your books, and you put that in, it goes in as collateral hours under finance in this particular case. That comes out as a secondary category, but from a Losap perspective, doing books is the same as washing an ambulance. It doesn't make the distinction. Only in the program at the admin level are we able to separate those things out if we want to. But as far as Losap is concerned, it's blind to that information. In this particular case, I'm doing some administration here, right? So I'm training you guys. So I've done about an hour of work by the time I've finished this. I'm going to put this in as administration. You know what? Thanks, guys, because I'm going to claim an hour of training to do this because that's about how long it's going to take me by the time I finish doing it. You notice I've already maxed out on my collateral, right? I can get a total of 25. I think I've got something like 120 hours of collateral in the background, but I'm still going to put it in there. It's not going to make any difference to my total caps because what am I? I'm capped at 25 points. But in the background, in administration, I can see that I actually did 150, 160 hours of work. Management's next. So I'm an officer. I've been an officer since January. Losap runs from January through to December. And all that I do for every month that I'm doing my job as an officer, I put in a tick. You notice that I can't go forward. So if I go and click on August, not there yet, can't count it. For every month that I do a job as an appointed officer or in an appointed chairperson's position, appointed by the president or elected to a position, then I get 2.08 points, which is 25, which is the cap, divided by 12. Okay, so I'm already up with that. My 14 points there has already been registered for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Okay, 7 months, 2.08, it's about 14 points. Doing the calculation for me automatically. And finally, military service. If somebody is deployed, and I stress deployed, it doesn't mean that they're in National Guard doing their 2 weeks and weekends. It means that they're physically deployed. So say somebody was deployed for 3 months at the beginning of the year, you can put in those points at that point and they will get 50 divided by, in this case, 10, so they get 5 points per month, up to a total of 50 points if they couldn't carry out their duties as in Losap because they were deployed. I don't have any military service. It is relevant to me, so I have 0. Okay, let's go back to one final thing here, which is duty hours. So we've already put our hours in, which relates directly to points, but you remember, duty hours doesn't have anything to do with Losap. Duty hours, in this particular case, I'm going to select the type. I've just done about an hour of administrative hours doing this job for you. It isn't that I'm double dipping, it's 2 totally separate things. It's apples and camels, right? The duty hours people are interested in because they want to know whether I've completed my obligation to do the 168 hours that I'm supposed to do during the year. I've done 1 hour of administration today. I'm going to record that hour, 1, and then I go and pick 0. You can do it in 15-minute increments. I'm going to go up and just take a quick look just to prove it here. It says here that during the last 12 months I have 288 hours. I'm about to add 1. Here it goes. Data saved. Let's go and see when it recalculates. There it is. I've now got 289. That is the explanation for this page. And there's one last thing I want to show you up here. Underneath this little 3-line area, right at the beginning on the first page, you saw my progress, my activity, my history, my account. I'm going to do the activity, history, and account in a different training, but that's how you get back to that. You can either use your back button, which I'll show you in a moment, or you can go in and directly select to a different page group. I'm going to use my back button to get that back there, and you can see that the same thing exists. Okay, and then you can go into one of the other account areas. That's the end of this training. I hope it was useful to you. Don't forget, this is mandatory. You must fill it in.